Hi everyone, my name is Lyndon. So back in January of this year, almost 1 year ago, I attended a DTS in something called YWAM. So for 5 months, I went away from my family, and the purpose of the whole trip was to grow in my relationship with Jesus and to pretty much be equipped and empowered and kind of like sent off that I'd be able to come home with a new sense of vision and purpose and be able to do things very differently than what I've kind of done before. Now to clarify, this video is really specific. This is on something called YWAM. And so if you're looking at this video going, what is YWAM? Let's learn about this. You can, and like obviously this video can be awesome for that too, but this is a very specific thing. It's for people who've attended YWAM really, and that's why I'm talking about it. So YWAM, like I said, the vision of YWAM is for empowering youth and to really encourage and develop and strengthen them as leaders. And then the goal was kind of like what Lauren Cunningham, the founder of YWAM, saw is like a wave of youth crashing into our world and just breaking down barriers and just pushing the limits and doing things that we haven't really done before. And so this is such a great thing. I'm not at all throughout this video dissing YWAM in any way. Honestly, this is such a life-changing experience for me. I was blown away at so many of the things that I learned that I never really thought about before. So the biggest thing for me when I'm talking about this is more that you can take all the amazing things of YWAM, but you can then come and take it home in the healthiest possible way and with the best results possible. Alright, so if you're expecting that as soon as you get to YWAM, it's like you're immediately hooked in and it's like, wow, this is the best choice I've ever made. Chances are like that's a case for a decent bit of people, but like the majority of people usually find it weird adjusting to it first. So for me, for about the first 2 weeks of coming into this DTS, I was really unsure. I honestly was like, did I just make like the worst decision of my life? Because I had thrown out like $8,000 to come to this discipleship training school, and I was just so distant from the whole thing. I was like, what is this? Like, have I really made the right choice? And you know, it is a very intense culture. It's different than society. I would say, to describe it, it's like a very healthy bubble. And what I mean by that is you've got literally like a full community within your YWAM base. And it's like you've got all these other students. You know, for me, I had 21 other students all around me all the time. You're growing in relationship with each other. You're bonding. Like honestly, throughout that throughout the course of that time, it's like literally we became family. You go through, lecture phase, which is 3 months. And then you go through 2 months of outreach. So lecture phase is pretty much every week a new speaker will come in and he will talk with you guys, go over a specific topic, like something like hearing God's voice, things like that. And as a group, there's interaction and you guys are getting involved with it. You're processing it together. Sometimes it can be things like inner healing or forgiveness. And, you guys are literally opening up about every single vulnerable part about you. And they're doing the same, and in that everyone becomes so close and vulnerable with each other that like you literally become family pretty much. Now, like all good things, YWAM has a beginning and it has an end. So it's 5 months normally for the DTS portion. They can obviously be like staffing and things like that, but for this it's 5 months and then it's done, right? And so you have 3 months lecture phase, like I said. You have 2 months outreach, which is pretty much the closest proximity you can get to people before full out killing everybody, because you literally see, during the lecture phase you can see all the healthy parts of people, and it's still a decent, you're able to like, you give your best, right? But then in the outreach phase you kind of can see all of everyone's flaws, and it's like such a close and intimate thing again, but it's really difficult. And then after all this, so you've had, it's like it's kind of escalated. YWAM's gone to like, whoa, like this is such a great experience and I've learned so much and I've grown. Then you get to the point where it's like, okay, well, I can see myself coming home now. I can see myself wanting to go back to my family, right? You begin to all kind of want to be back there, right? So then you come back to the YWAM base at the end, and this is like right before everything's done, and you have about 1 week where they call it debrief week. And this week is to prep you for going home. And honestly, like, I don't think 1 week can really cover that. They do as best as they can to take you through the steps of healthy transition back into society and back into normal life. But there's nothing that can fully prepare you for coming back home. It's just such an abrupt change in pace. You go from like this spiritual growth and everything's planned, and like, you know, you have serve days, you have all this stuff, and you have worship nights, and literally everything is so well paced. And then all of a sudden you come home and you're like, whoa, I got to do this myself. I have to, you know, be intentional with actually praying and stuff. Because, I mean, during YWAM, you can literally just like, oh, I forgot to do, you know, devotions. I forgot to pray for a week. It doesn't matter. Like, you're still growing. You're always growing in YWAM. But then when you come home, it's like, oh, we really need to be intentional with this whole thing. Like, this is a big deal. YWAM is such an intimate and close-knit community. Like, it is something that you can't really imagine until you're in it. It's just, you know, everyone knows you on a great level, and you're able to just have great conversations all the time. People truly care about how you're doing, and they want to know, are you doing well? Like, just, you know, how are you adjusting to everything in YWAM? And then you come home and you still have that community. Like, you can still message them online and stuff like that. That's the nice thing about our day and age, is you have that availability to be able to message each other. But, you know, you still are home, and you're in an environment that is familiar to you. But it's weird because as much as things have changed back home in this last 5 months, not really. Like, it literally feels exactly the same. That's probably the hardest part, is it feels like you have such a high expectation that life's going to be so great when you get home and stuff. And it is, and it's fun, and it's great to see your family and stuff. But then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's not like I'm being here for 4 days and then I'm going back to YWAM. It's like, okay, I'm back. And like, it's just one of those things where you really have to address that, right? And now, obviously, I have my own personal experience, and it could be different for many people. But I think I just want to share my experience because, I mean, if you can learn anything from it and do things differently in a way that's more healthy and easier to adjust, go for it. Because that's my goal of making this video, is just that I'm able to share my experience that you could maybe grow from it. So when I first got back from YWAM, it was an expectation of like, wow, I get to be back with my family. I got to see my nephews. Like, it was just so awesome being able to, you know, see these people that I haven't seen in 5 months. But, you know, I'm not even kidding. For me, it was like 2 days of all of a sudden just like hitting this wall. And I was like, whoa, I'm here. Like, you know, all those times of thinking, when I get home, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do all this different stuff. All of a sudden it's like, whoa, I'm here. This is real. And honestly, it was at that point where, you know, I ruffled through all my stuff and I pull out the sheet of like how to properly and healthily adjust back into society. And it's like step 1, and, you know, trying to do this the best possible way. And I felt crushed. It was weird because, you know, you have all these expectations, and life is life. It's not like it's just all sunshine and rainbows. It's like there are, like, the thing that I think I struggled with the most was like when you came home, you just expect life to be super fun and that everyone's devoted to just hanging out with you, which is kind of what YWAM's been like. But all of a sudden you get home and your family's going to work and things like that, and you're like, whoa. For me, I had like a week to adjust, and then I went back to full-time work as a carpenter. So, you know, I'm looking at this piece of paper and I'm going, okay, what does it talk about? And so with the whole process of adjusting back into life, they talk about 3 different things. Now, this could be different from a lot of different people's. I don't know, YWAM's big. YWAM's got like 1,000 bases all around the world. So, you know, this is one specific experience, but I know a lot of people who have experienced the same type of thing. So, in the little booklet that they gave me in my particular DTS, they talk about 3 different ways that people can kind of adjust back into life. And one of the biggest things they talk about is, you know, there's alienating, or there's assimilating, or there's integrating. Those are like the 3 big things that happen. And, you know, it's obviously not exactly just one of those things, but predominantly you'll favor one of those ways of adjusting and coping when you come home. So for me, in my personal experience, it was literally like a jumbled up experience of all 3 of those, like I was saying. So when I first got home, the first 2 weeks pretty much of being back was like I alienated society. You know, you become super analytical and like maybe even judgmental just towards society. Like, oh man, Western society is so entitled and so spoiled, and like, how can you have this and all this stuff, right? You've just been like I was in Costa Rica and Mexico, and you know, you see all these different cultural things, and you're like, wow, we've got it so good here. Why are we so selfish? And why don't we just give stuff to each other and whatever? And then it's like, what ends up happening is I literally, like, what happens when you alienate is you become like a hermit. You like shut yourself out from society, and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to exist in my own bubble. You guys can't come into this. And it's like, you're constantly looking back to YWAM going, if only I could come back, if only I could do this, if only I could be back with those people, back with my people, and back with all that culture that I'm so used to now. And then, the other way of coping, adjusting, not just coping, way of adjusting is assimilating. So that is another huge thing. So it looks different than alienating, obviously. Alienating is like very obvious that you're not adjusting that well. It's like, have you seen Lyndon? No, he's like under a blanket in his room, like he's gone. Or there is assimilating. And assimilating can appear to be quite normal. People can be like, oh, you're healthily transitioning back into life. But the reality is you're not to the full extent anyways. Like what assimilating is you're pretty much just adapting into society. It's like, boom, I am back to exactly the same routine as I had before YWAM, and this is everything. You just kind of go back into the same job, talk with the same friends, you act the exact same ways you did before, and you're pretty much just like, really what it is, it's like a band-aid. It's like, I'm not going to address this, I'm just going to cover it over, and I'm just going to live life like I've always lived it, and that's everything. And so, yeah, that can appear to be easier, and that can appear to be, I don't know, relatively risk-free. It's like, this is actually pretty nice, like normal. But like, again, people will ask you like, well, how was YWAM? And you're like, oh, it was great. But you don't really want to talk about it. It's like a sore subject for you. And that's kind of what I felt like for a while. So I first gone from like being a hermit to all of a sudden I was just putting a Band-Aid over the whole thing. I didn't want to talk about it. I was like, this is kind of discouraging for me. It's like, because life obviously is not going to always be as structured and planned and intentionally growth, just as fun as YWAM really is. But YWAM is more like, I feel like it's like a honeymoon pretty much. You're like really intentionally growing and having fun and just seeing how cool God is, but then you all of a sudden get tested. It's like, okay, now it's time for the real test, right? And so assimilating, it's honestly such a big risk, because what ends up happening is if the longer you just continue to put this Band-Aid on, you continue to say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or that this is not actually that big of a shift, right? Coming back to life and just kind of existing. What ends up happening is you risk losing all these amazing things that you've just learned in YWAM. And now you might be like, well, that's not true. Like, it's ingrained in my heart. Like, this is real. Sure. But the reality is that the longer you just ignore something, it's not going to surface anymore. Like, you may have found a new deep conviction for wanting to do something differently, and all of a sudden you're hanging out with the same friends that have the same bad influence on you, and guess what's happening? You're all of a sudden finding that you're becoming like that again. You don't feel those convictions as strongly as you did in YWAM. So then the last thing, then this is like the healthiest possible way to adjust, is the integrators. So what that means, these are like really fancy names, right? But the integrators, what that is that's taking all the knowledge you've learned in YWAM, and that's equipping it and putting it into practice in life. Because life is life. Like, it's not perfect, it's not pretty, it's just life. And things happen, and it's not like you always have community always surrounding you at every like beck and call 24/7 like you kind of had in YWAM. Now it's like, God, I need you, and God, you are my source. You are the ultimate number one person that I want to go to with this and the problems that I have, stuff like that. So what an integrator is, you take all the knowledge, the things you've learned from YWAM, and then you pretty much like equip it. You use it, right? And it's in life, normal life. And so for me, I can now confidently and thankfully say that I've integrated into society the things that I've learned in YWAM. But the purpose of me making this video was that I wanted to talk about some of the struggles that I found and how I was able to overcome that. Because I have a lot of friends who did YWAM as well. And for me, what I've noticed, a common theme, common denominator with all of us has been that when you come back from YWAM, you can almost feel lost, like I have no direction in life. I don't know what I'm doing, stuff like that. And it can be difficult to be like, okay, what am I doing now? What am I going to do? God, what do you have for me? Your expectation of life just becomes like small. It's like, there's no hope. This is the end. This is over. And for me, when I came home, it was like, this is literally That was literally the highlight of my entire life. And now, boom, what's next? You know what I mean? Like nothing. I just felt so discouraged with that whole concept of nothing's going to be there. And so when you come back, I went through, like I said, alienating, and then I went assimilating. And the only way I was able to actually begin to kind of not settle, but like actually excel and just stay focused really and grow my relation with God is actually involving Him. I know that sounds really straightforward and simple. It's like, wow, you just blew my mind. Not really. The biggest thing for me is involving Him, involving God in everyday life and saying, God, life sucks without you. Because the reality is, if we just had YWAM without God, it wouldn't be that great. The reality is, with Christ, with Jesus in each day is the reason why we had such a great experience in the first place. If God hadn't showed up in YWAM, then we wouldn't have had fun. And the reality is, He is showing up. He is here when you are back from your YWAM DTS. So the biggest thing in this is to be like, God, you know what? YWAM is awesome, and it was such a great experience. I learned, I grew, I was shaped, I was transformed. But now I believe you have more for me, right? Because YWAM, you got like your day trips to go out and help kids, things like that. It's like, that's cool, but also I believe God can do bigger things with me as well, right? And it doesn't always have to look a certain way or be set out a certain way. God is so creative in the things that He does, right? And so it's like, we can't just expect that this is it and that's all we have, and now that we're back home, there's nothing, right? So the biggest thing with YWAM and with coming back is, involving God, like I said, is saying, Jesus, I invite you to work in my life. And the biggest thing is actually, like I said, being 2 months back from YWAM, I'd gone through alienating and assimilating, and I got to a point where I was just so fed up with just not doing anything. Because, you want to be in ministry, you want to be growing, you want to be shaping things, you want to be developing, and all of a sudden you feel like you're doing nothing. You feel useless. You're just like in this pause state. And so, I remember one day I came back. It was like a weekend trip. I drove up to my family's house and just sitting there with my family, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Honestly, I feel so lost. And I just sat there, and I just remember my mom coming up with the idea. She's like, well, let's pray over it. Let's do some releasing. And honestly, that sounds so cheesy. I'm not one for like spiritual terms or anything like that. But one thing that actually stuck out that did legitimately sound true is that you make such strong connections with these people. Like, think about it. At your rawest point in life, and at their rawest point in life, you become friends, and you're able to grow and continue to be strengthened and equipped into the men and women that God have called you to be, right? And so it was like a realization of, whoa, I need to give this to God. Okay. And this is actually the main premise of this video. This is why I wanted to talk about it, is releasing it to God is so important. And it's so important to just be like, Jesus, I expect more, and I just choose to give this to you. Like, pray over your friends. Like, this is what I would just encourage you. Obviously, again, like I said, this is a isolated case, but I do believe that this happens to a lot of people. And even if you could learn one or two simple things that I did when coming back from YWAM that you could do differently, then this video would be worth it for me to make. So the biggest thing, though, is being like, God, I give you my friends, I give you my leaders, I give you my teachers, I give you all these different things, all these different people I met throughout YWAM, and I choose to release them to you, God. And I pray blessing over them, and you know what I mean, all this different stuff. And then I say, God, now I choose to release them to you, and now I choose to equip myself with you, and that, Jesus, that I want you alone to be my source. That, my source is not these people, right? It's not like I'm, needing them for all my spiritual growth. It's like, Jesus, I need you, right? So the biggest thing is just kind of releasing that to God and saying, okay, God, now you and I will run in this life, and we'll see crazy things happen. And honestly, we had a night of prayer, and yeah, there were some tears. I don't cry ever, but that night I did, and it was pretty crazy. And then after that time, honestly, within 2 days, I found such a shift in my life. It was like, whoa. It's like that cloud of, oh, life will never be the same, life is this, all of a sudden turned into, wow, life will never be the same, and this is going to be so cool, and I'm going to see amazing things with God. And now, obviously, life looks different, and it's going to look different for each one of you guys as well. But for me now, I found all of a sudden I started getting a desire for the church, a desire for ministry. And now, I'm working in the church. I'm doing a lot of media stuff with that. And I'm leading a youth group, like I actually started one, and things like that. And all of a sudden I'm getting fired up, and I'm, seeing more opportunities to share the gospel. And things that I remembered learning in YWAM all of a sudden are becoming truths and things that I'm really equipping in my life. So for my encouragement for you is to not ignore what you learned in YWAM, but to actually really take a look at it and say, okay, this is what happened. It was an amazing experience. But now, God, I'm going to move forward with you using those truths that I've learned in YWAM, but I'm going to rely solely on you, not on any person, individual, but on you, Jesus. So, guys, that's pretty much it for this video. That's kind of what I wanted to address. And like I said, this video has literally no negative connotations in it. It's not like I'm talking about this bashing YWAM. I firmly believe in YWAM, and I actually believe it works. I'm not going to say that it's the only way that God can equip us and grow us and shape us into the ministry. There's also a lot of other things. God's very creative, like I said. He can do a lot of things. But my main point is this. It's that have an expectation that this is not the end. It's not like going back from YWAM and all of a sudden, okay, now I got to get a mundane job. I got to live a boring life. It's like my family always says, God's not boring, we're boring. So if God's not boring, then let's just keep running with him, and I think life's going to be pretty fun. So that's just my encouragement for you guys. If you liked this video, obviously they're not all my videos on my channel are not all going to be about YWAM, but my goal is to create encouraging and uplifting videos and just topics and things that we don't really normally talk about, and just address them. So if you guys liked this video, be sure to, click thumbs up and subscribe if you want to. No pressure. All right.